Ready to go if my timer can begin. So here I am in Photoshop. I'm going to show you a couple of things in the desktop tools which will hopefully inspire you as to how we're making things easier for students to achieve, and different things that you can do that you might not have expected you could do in Photoshop. So this, of course, looks like a 3D render of a zombie character in here, and it isn't. It's actually a 3D character itself. You'll see that if I click on the layer for that, it is 3D content, and I can go from my controls just here. So I can orbit this around, and I can pan, and I can dolly in and out, all like so. I can change the lighting intent from here, so if I just switch out to a 3D workspace. Okay, so this will give me the light just here. If I click on that again, then what I can do is pick a color from the surroundings, and you can see how that works and how easy that is. I was going to expand this, the timeline, because this isn't just a 3D character, it's a collada animation. And for those of you who are able to watch Max, you'll know that this is something that's coming along in Photoshop, and there'll be the ability to actually animate characters, rig and animate characters directly from that using a service that we acquired last year. So I'm going to do a few things here, such as set up my camera, so I can go here, like so, and this will take this back to this view, and then I can just let this play, like so. Now it's taken a few minutes there just to play slowly because it's actually pre-rendering those frames. But what this actually means for me, I'm just going to speed that up and scroll through it like so. Here you go, you can have a chuckle at this person dancing like that. Ooh! Right, so, okay, what this actually means is I can achieve things that previously would have been fragmented industrially amongst teams. So what you'd have is you'd have a 3D modeling team who would perhaps put the model together, and then they'd render that in a particular position and pass that over to you, and then your job in assembling this layout would be to light that in the same way that the creature's or creature thing, whatever, is rendered. And if there was something wrong, if it wasn't in exactly the right position, then it would be rinse and repeat throughout that cycle. So you'd have this whole like waterfall of things where you go back and then iterate and so on and so on. But by building the animation in like so, all I need to do is move back to the frame that I actually want to use and do that. So I can render my 2D graphics for web and print out of this directly. I can also, of course, come to the export menu and render the video there from that as well. So that's something else where normally you'd hand over to another team and they would put those things together. But here, I'll be able to do that, and in the coming version of Photoshop, I'll be able to actually use my library assets to bring this together. So I can do all of those things, and of course, if I got back to a certain point, if I got to here and I ran this animation, and somebody said to me, you know, that's not quite right where that needs to be, it needs to sort of go across, then of course what I can do is just turn this around, like so, and then run that from there. So an awful lot of possibilities. In addition to that, if I go to the layers just here, and what I'm going to try and do for you is just zoom in on this area just here. Oh, actually, I'm not on the 3D panel, so I'll just do that now. You can see that I've got access to all of the different materials and things in here, so I can change this infinitely almost inside of there. Just one person working on their own, and it's a lot more accessible for your teams because the animation is achieved basically by picking sequences and then stitching the different sequences together. So for example, you could have a walk sequence that broke into a run sequence, that broke into a jump sequence from there, and then it builds you the animation based on those things. Very, very accessible. If you want a rough idea of how that's going to look in the future, then you can explore this particular site. So if I just come up to here, and what I'm going to do, once I get my browser a bit bigger, is go to mixamo.com. So you can test this out. Oops, sorry. Typing, not my strong point. just there, which is really funny as a former Royal Signals radio telegraphist, but there you go. So you can see here, you can learn everything you need to learn about this. And this was originally for the gaming market, and you could put FXBs out from that. But the site will, and the service will, rig your creation for you, or you can pick from pre-built characters. And you can also use our Fuse product. There's plenty of information on here, far too much for me to cover in this small segment, and then animate that from there. So you'll see all of these things work perfectly. So do if you can, have a look at that. So interesting stuff from the Photoshop stable with that, I'm sure you'll agree. Just one final thing on it. A lot of schools are now starting to experiment with prototyping and using 3D printing, and this is something else that Photoshop can do for me. This particular model was a motion-tracked human being to achieve this. They were wearing a motion suit and tracked. I can actually 3D print this directly from Photoshop. It tells me that it's too big to print here. That's the actual volume of my printer down at the bottom there, but I can actually scale this down to the print volume of my machine. And again, if this wasn't the right pose, so I can have a look around the model like so. If this wasn't the right pose, and of course I've got access to the timeline, and I can just come out and get the pose I want. And then Photoshop does all of the additional work to make that into a unified mesh. It has to be one single watertight mesh in order to print, and we'll fix that and generate all of the necessary supports. If you want more information on that whole thing, my colleague Richard Curtis at Adobe, so you can go to his blog. That's blogs.adobe.com/Richard Curtis. That's the sort of font of all knowledge for things in that area. So one other thing, just to inspire you on how easy it is for your students to do interesting stuff. This is Character Animator. And what this does is it uses PSD and AI artwork to generate a character. You stick to a special layer naming convention. You then look at the webcam, like so, and you can see me just over here. And then, once it's focused, you click Set Rest Pose. And if I just come in on that, I'm just going to zoom in slightly. I don't mean to scare you or put you off your afternoon snack. But you can see here, and this is one of the few benefits I've ever realized from having such massive eyebrows, is it makes them really easy to track, like so. So I can do that, and it tracks me. And so now the monster is doing what I am doing. It needs a special voice, of course. My voice is insufficient. So it will talk to you. It will track my position, my distance to and from the camera, like so. Using additional keys, I can animate this further. By presets, I can... Dude, what are you doing? Okay, so you don't wish to respond. This makes me angry. And now I'm just going to look mildly disinterested, like so. So you build this thing, and what you can do is then record a whole sequence. And if you've ever seen how these things are built otherwise, using puppetry and pins, and then having to lip sync things, here you just draw your phonemes into the different layers, name them in a particular way, and everything gets mapped for you. And I've got a couple of other characters I can show you just here, seeing as I've got just a moment or two. So I've got this one, which has got different voice altogether, and some physics. Like that, you see the physics on the side, like that. And then I've got one more character just here, which is like a monster, with some eyebrow action, like so. And I don't know why I sound vaguely like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I do. So, there you are. Loads and loads of fun. Really easy to engage with and work with. All you need to do is look at it, fire the comp out to After Effects, and bring that in, and there you are done. I was asked to try and recover 5 minutes, so I've done it successfully. Get in. All right, that's me done. Thank you very much. Cheers.